All right, let's some Tennessee basketball with our boy Will Warren, aka Stats by Will, aka member of the fastest growing, best college basketball coverage at Basket Under Review. Will, hope you had a good Thanksgiving, brother. How are you?
You always give me such a good sell.
You're my boy.
That's one of your greatest skills. You give everybody a great sell.
I put everyone over. It's great. I
Mhm.
put Cody over. I put Seth over. I put you over. I'm making Bubba and Sam stars. I'm just a point guard. I'm Chris Paul out here trying to make people look good and holler at Kim Kardashian.
The
But
distributor.
Tennessee basketball up to number 13 in the AP Top 25. Too high, too low, just right.
Think about pretty appropriate for what we've seen so far. I could see, a little higher. Tennessee's 12th at some of the nerd sites, 10th, I think, at Torvik. But I mean, they've basically played 3 real games, 1 blowout, and a couple of either-or games. So I think it's a pretty appropriate ranking. Tennessee looks the part of somebody you're going to see in your bracket later this year as a 3 or 4 seed. Maybe doesn't quite have the night-to-night floor you've become used to yet, but as Barnes himself said, the ceiling could be higher because I do agree with him. I don't know that last year's team beats Houston, but I also don't know that last year's team loses to Kansas.
I saw that quote. I like that quote. Rick Barnes not pulling any punches with his team, coaching them, matter of factly. I appreciate that. But is it fair to say, Will, because I was pretty frustrated about that game. Don't get me wrong. It was bad. But like at the end of the day, is that not maybe something you throw out just as a third game in 3 days type of thing? You're not ever going to play a back-to-back-to-back game ever again.
Right. I mean, the only other time that happens is the conference tournament. And at this point, I think we can all agree conference tournaments largely don't really matter to the bottom line. I mean, when you're playing in them, you want to win, but they clearly don't matter in seeding. But yeah, I don't take much from the third game. Tennessee, it's probably ideal for the staff to have a game where your first half shows your potential and your second half shows all the things you need to work on. Certainly frustrating as it went down, but Tennessee came in there and got the win they needed to beat Houston. That's it obviously doesn't matter like the Elite Eight game did, but I think for your program, you need to show that you can beat what a lot of people see as the superior version of your own thing. And so going out and doing that is a pretty big deal, I would say.
Yeah, the win felt bigger than the loss. That's
Mhm.
fair to say, right? The Houston win, a resume maker. The Kansas loss, not one that's really going to hurt you. I looked at it more as just missing an opportunity to get another big feather in the cap, notch on the belt type of thing.
Yeah.
Well, I thought that, kind of at the start of the season, a lot of people maybe had some questions about what Jaylen Carey's production was really going to be. Some foul trouble was kind of an issue there. But then in Vegas, it really felt like he kind of turned a new corner and played some really clean basketball and also kind of gave you a big spark off the bench. What did you kind of see differently out of him out in Vegas?
Well, I felt kind of dumb in retrospect because the reason Tennessee brought him in was because he pants Tennessee in those 2 Vandy games. Who is Tennessee's best national comparison? Houston. I probably should have seen it coming that he would be very good against Houston and against a similar defensive program, though I don't think Kansas's offense is very good, but that's water in the bridge now. Similar team in Kansas. To have those 2 performances is really good. And honestly, against KU, very impressed by his passing, which I hadn't seen in games before. So if that is a real thing going forward, and I know at Vandy, the question was always consistent night-to-night effort, consistent night-to-night, rebounding, consistent night-to-night work in the post and not being quote-unquote soft. We hadn't really seen much of that in the first few games this year, and we've seen him go from starting against Mercer to, I think, 11th man against North Florida or Northern Kentucky. For him to sort of reclaim that spot, and you notice you didn't see, I don't think much of any of Dwayne Brown in Vegas. That's a good thing for Carey to get that spot back because when he is on, he does give Tennessee a physicality and an offensive post ceiling they don't really have otherwise.
Yeah, Carey jumping out against Houston, it felt like it clicked with me, kind of like I imagined it did with everybody else. But like Rick Barnes got him because of Houston. Like it felt like Rick Barnes went out and said, we need to be more physical. We need to be bruisers. We need some people that aren't going to back down from Houston's front line. Oh, wait, here's Jaylen Carey, who threw Zakai Ziegler down inside of Thompson Bowling Arena at Food City Center and really kicked our front line's ass. Let's go get him. Been an uneven start for him, but did Vegas change your mind about him moving forward? Or like you said, is the questions about, his work ethic or consistency, maybe a better way to put it, will that still be out there? Or do you think Tennessee's starting to settle in on their rotation? Because Vegas, you talked about with Dwayne Brown, the 10, 11, 12 man rotation got shrunk down to 8.5 against Houston. And even against Kansas, a team that, was pretty shorthanded, but playing on 3 days rest, Tennessee still didn't really empty the bench there. You really only had, 2 bench players play double-digit minutes. Estrella and Abram got 9 each. Do you think Carey has moved ahead in the rotation? Do you think the rotation's starting to kind of figure itself out? How do you view that as Tennessee gets ready to go to Syracuse tonight?
Kind of a yes to all of that because they need him to be good. I think it was a good matchup for him, certainly. But the good part of this post-rotation, and I think why they've done it this way, is that you may not have a star. And while I think Estrella was an exceptionally big part of the Houston game, he did have a minutes limitation. You might not have a star in this post rotation, but it feels like you have a lot of answers for a lot of different things. So I won't be shocked if Carey is a big factor against Florida, for example, a team where you have to be really physical and score on their post players, try and get them in foul trouble. I think Akpara is going to be huge the rest of the year just as a rim protector and a lob guy, if nothing else. Cade is a great energy big. JP, I think, can have a really high variance game to game, but he has, to me, the best and most diverse offensive skill set of the group. And then you can throw in Brown if perhaps you're not doing so well on the boards or you just need a guy that can go in there and bully his way to an offensive rebound or two. I like what they've got, and I think I'm seeing the vision a bit better than I was a month ago. Took a couple of games to see it, but I understand why they built it this way. I won't be surprised if Brown falls out, not like permanently, but only becomes a spot player. They're going to have to clear out the guard rotation a bit. Troy Henderson is probably not going to play much in these big games. I am curious to see if and how Ethan Berg separates himself a little bit because he's had some up and down performances. They've still got questions, but it's becoming clearer is what I would go with.
After what we saw defensively from Bishop Boswell out there in Vegas, do you think any of the roles from either of those guys of Ethan Berg or Amari Abram kind of changes with the way it kind of feels like Boswell has taken a hold of that number 2 guard spot?
Yeah, I still think you need those two just because they're better, have more offensive upside than Bishop, but neither can defend like Bishop. It felt a little Meshack-like at times, especially in that Houston game with Boswell out there, which I didn't expect. But with Abram and Berg, Abram had, I believe, 2 really key first half threes against Houston to keep Tennessee alive in that game. Berg had a big one in the Kansas game to extend Tennessee's lead. His only points in Players era, for the record. So I don't know. I do think one is going to see their minutes diminish, but I don't think both, and I'm not sure who yet. I would lean Abram kind of stays a bigger part just because he's got a little bit more of a two-way game, but you don't really know yet. I think Boswell separating himself has been a really good thing, though. And as we saw, he can shoot a little bit. It's not always consistent, but the shooting stroke looks better than it did last year, and he seems more confident offensively.
Talking with our friend Will Warren, a.k.a. Stats by Will, Basket Under Review.com. The Rutgers game saw both Nate Ament and Ja'Kobi Gillespie go off, but Houston and Kansas saw both of those guys kind of struggle. Gillespie, 4 of 19 from 3 in those 2 games. Nate Ament, 2 for 9. Talking about the front line is great. I love the beefy boys up front that are going to help, Tennessee be physical. But this team is only going to go as far as Nate and Ja'Kobi take them. How would you grade their performance in Vegas? And do you have cause for concern? Or is it just hey, Houston's defense is really good. Kansas was the 3rd game in 3 days type of thing?
It's kind of funny that we feel like they didn't play very well because in each game, one of the 2 got to 20. Yeah. Which is pretty good. But I would agree. I mean, Gillespie, I think, is going to have the higher game-to-game ceiling, but the lower game-to-game floor, simply because he can't get to the line or get to the rim quite like Ament can. So I really thought in the second half against KU, and probably the whole game, but especially that second half as the lead dwindled, it was clear to me Gillespie's legs were dying out a little bit. He had been asked to play a lot of minutes. He was a huge part of the Houston win. I think he played 75 of a possible 80 between those two games. So I wouldn't be shocked if he just kind of lost it a little bit. But with Ament, he was able to keep Tennessee going in that game. And I know he struggled the second half somewhat, but 8 for 8 from the free throw line, gets fouled a lot, really good rebounder. I agree that those two are going to take Tennessee as far as they can. But it was nice to see that, and we really haven't seen this yet, both of them have a bad game at the same time. You know, I know like they weren't super efficient or super great outings, but each of them scored 20 in at least one of those games, which was nice to see. And so if that can stay the same, Tennessee's night-to-night floor is going to stay high, which they really need, because I think defensively this group is not going to be as elite as past years, but the trade-off is worth it because the offense we've seen so far is honestly pretty good.
Well, what do you see when you see Syracuse tonight? Another team that I think played pretty better than I thought in Vegas. Syracuse looked better than I thought. I won't say they played well or anything out there because I don't think they really got too many good results on their favor, right? Did they not go? Did they go over 3 out there?
Yeah. Over 3.
Yeah. But I thought they played better than I thought, you know, taking Houston to overtime and looked maybe like they have some spark. What do you see when you look at Syracuse and the way Tennessee matches up with them?
Well, Tennessee is going to be a little fortunate to draw Syracuse without Donnie Freeman again, who's Syracuse's best player. Really good two-way star for them. But I like what I see from Syracuse defensively for the first time in several years. They don't play zone anymore. It's a true man-to-man. So they've gotten rid of the 2-3, which I find interesting. But really good at the rim. William Kyle, formerly of UCLA, has been a really strong rim protector for them. Doesn't foul too much either, which I like to see. Their backcourt just seems more locked in than I recall. They move better, switch better. I think kind of moving out of the zone and moving more towards a more switchable lineup. Not that you want Kyle and a point guard or whatever, but 1 through 4 can all handle those matchups quite well. I don't love their offense, to be honest. I think if you watch the Houston game and the Kansas game, you saw them miss a lot of free throws. It's just because they can't shoot. It's not a good shooting offense. They don't really move the ball very well. Keon Anthony is getting a lot of headlines. I can't proclaim to enjoy watching him play. So, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, I guess. But sans Freeman, they just don't really have that go-to guy. They've dumped it down to Kyle a lot, so I wonder if he might be their focus here to get some of UT's front court in foul trouble. But I think this is going to be a gas tank game of sorts. Syracuse can keep up for a good while. Nathan George has been, kind of hot and cold at times, but he moves the ball well and can get inside. Kyle is good. If this is the game where Nate Kings or JJ Starling or even Tyler Betsy hit threes, this could be close. But Tennessee simply has more depth. It also is going to help Tennessee that Syracuse is really bad at rebounding, like below water, despite not playing a very good schedule so far. So I won't be surprised at all if Tennessee really owns the boards, really owns the front court battle here. And it's sort of like a slow bleed out game.
3 tough games for Tennessee here over the next 2 weeks against a lot of quality opponents. What do you kind of need to see the most out of Nate Ament's game in terms of progression over these next 3 to kind of continue to see that slow build as you kind of get closer to SEC play?
I think I'd like to see him stay, keep going downhill. Don't be afraid of contact. Not that he's been afraid yet, but we've seen him resort to some pull-up mid-range twos, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I don't mind him taking those, but those should be, for him, I think, the last resort. I don't want those, 16, 14 seconds left on the shot clock. That's the last shot of a possession you can generate. He's got to keep going downhill and getting opponents in foul trouble, because as of now, Tennessee doesn't really have another guard or wing that can do that. Gillespie can get to and take his runners and floaters, and they're pretty good, but he's not really a foul magnet. He's not really your SGA type. Ament is that, and I think especially against Illinois, who's run through some injuries so far, they have one of the Avicic brothers available usually, not usually both. If you can get one of those 2 in foul trouble, you're in business. So I think he's going to be a really big key for me, just continuing to get to the foul line. I guess over the next 3, if I were to put a timer at it, and I don't love this for watchability, but I like it for Tennessee, 25 or more free throw attempts over the next 3 games. I want to see that. If you can get to 25 or more, Tennessee could very well go 3-0.
At Syracuse, neutral site, Illinois, home for Louisville. Tennessee's record at the end of those 3 games is what?
Just out of those 3 or over?
Well, I mean, either way, we can do the math. We're 7-1
yeah.
now, so are we 10-1, 9-2?
I think you have to be at least 9-2. You gotta. I want at least 9-2. I don't mind if they split the Illinois and Louisville games. Those are 2 really strong opponents. You're going to be favored, I would say, in all 3. Law of averages would imply 2-1. But I think I would put it like this: if you want a 1 or a 2 seed, which I know a lot of people obviously do, you want to go 3-0 and be 10-1. If you're okay just wearing home uniforms in the round of 32, being a top 4 seed, 2-1 is fine. But I would also argue you kind of want to get these games now, and the Louisville game especially is a really rosy spot, given you have, I think, 9 full days off, something like that. It's a long
Saturday to Tuesday. Yeah, you get a nice break. So
I'm assuming that's finals related.
Yeah, the Kansas loss makes me want to go 3-0 here. Like, yeah, I think if you'd beaten Kansas, I think I'd have been fine with 2-1, but you kind of need to make up a little ground that you lost. Real quick on the way out, Will, anything in the SEC stand out to you so far? Anything you want to note?
I'm really afraid Vanderbilt looks awesome.
It's the last damn thing I need after this football weekend.
Yeah. Not really pleasant seeing them demolish a St. Mary's defense that basically never gets got. They're just so fundamentally sound, and it looked like Vandy was playing, Arkansas Pine Bluff or whoever. It didn't really matter. So their offense is legitimate. I think it's one of the 3 or 4 best in America. Defensively, I don't really buy it yet. I think they're going to give up a lot of points to some teams, but they kind of, I know this is going to sicken you, so feel free to mute. They give off some 2022 Tennessee football vibes, and that the offense might be so good that the defense doesn't matter. So I worry that we're going to have to deal with good Vanderbilt for most of the season.
Stats by Will. Give him a follow. Basket Under Review. Go read his work. We'll talk to him again maybe next week to recap a huge week of Tennessee basketball. Will, appreciate you as always, brother.
Thanks for having me on.
Hour 1 of the books. Hour 2 coming at you. Let's talk sports on FANRUN Radio.